Hello everyone, welcome back to the Christ MotoGP Podcast and happy 2025 to wherever you are in the world. We've had a nice little break and it's time to just do a little roundup podcast of the things that have happened over the Christmas break and the start of the new year. Joining me, Jordan Morland as ever, is Lewis Duncan and Pete McLaren. Lewis, happy new year. We're here to talk about MotoGP and KTM. There was stuff that broke just before Christmas and subsequently things have came out after Christmas about the state that the company is in. It doesn't look good, does it, on the surface for the long term, but at least the short term, we know they're going to be racing in MotoGP for 2025, but it's the long term plan for KTM that looks very uncertain, doesn't it?
Yeah, Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you all had a lovely whatever you got up to over the past few weeks. Yeah, KTM situation's obviously been rumbling on for pretty much since the 24 season ended. Was really when we got the first kind of inklings that there was problems. The latest that we've had, there was the first creditors meeting in Austria just before Christmas, and you know there was some good news came from that. KTM was allowed to continue in its current form. The creditors believe its kind of self-administration plans and restructuring plans are pretty solid. They feel there's enough kind of equity in there to make the company viable, and I think the creditors think that their initial plan will probably be voted positively on by all the creditors. That's what they need to kind of essentially the creditors, all the people they owe money to. The plan is for them to be paid 30% of that debt over a 2-year period, but that then means essentially swallowing the 70% that's kind of that they're going to miss out on. But that's business that happens quite a lot. The most interesting thing for us is the racing side of it, and the report did say that withdrawal from MotoGP was planned. Now, planned is a very vague statement, as I made quite a flippant point in a feature about this over the Christmas period, that a lot of people plan to go and do exercise in the New Year as part of the New Year's resolutions, but that doesn't necessarily specify what New Year. We do now know from an Austrian media report that 2026, so we assume the end of 2026, although that's quite vague at this moment, is when this planned withdrawal is, which coincides with the end of the current rules regulation cycle and also the current contract period with Dorna. KTM has confirmed to Crash.net and the wider media world that they are going to be racing in 2025. As we've said before in this podcast, budgets for that next year will probably have already been set aside long before. No comment yet on the rumours and reports about a development freeze, but looking into next year, there is obviously going to be an engine development freeze that carries on to the end of 26, and the likelihood for there being that much bike development anyway is going to be fairly slim as everyone starts diverting resources to 2027. So this is the situation we're at right now, is that KTM basically carrying on definitely for 2025, probably for 2026, but beyond that for 2027, we don't know. They need investment. There is some investment into the company that's already kind of been not confirmed, but there's been three investors of up to 700 million euros have kind of come forward from the report, so that's good. And I think there are other interested parties as well. KTM seems quite positive about that. From the racing side especially, we've had kind of rumours of Lewis Hamilton expressing interest, or his management expressing interest with that came from Motorsport boss Pit Beirer in an interview with Speedweek. So it's a very fluid situation right now. I think before we go any further, the most important thing is it sounds like the staff have been paid or are going to be paid their December wages, which is obviously the main thing. It's a horrible time for people to kind of be faced with financial uncertainty over Christmas, but still a very uncertain situation at the moment. But as far as 2025 is concerned, it's full speed ahead. Beyond that point, we'll see.
Yeah, that's nicely summarised, Lewis. I think that's the key, isn't it? You know what's going to happen for this year and potentially next year, but Pete, the future is still very uncertain because there is going to be more sort of debt sort of management meetings and creditor reports that will come out within the next month or two. It's very uncertain, isn't it? Still, that essentially what Lewis says, they need investment, and yeah, that's the key, isn't it, for the future of the company?
Yeah, I think it's sort of cautious optimism at the moment, isn't it, from this first meeting? As you say, they do need investment. Let's hope they can find it. I think the concern also is that the staff, if in the team, if they're highly desired by other teams, how long will they be willing to hang around and wait and see how things develop? As Lewis was saying, I think that the final vote is end of February, isn't it? So just a few days before the Thai Grand Prix. Now, if you're someone who's been approached by other teams already in the past, you're really good at your job, you've got messages saying, hey, should we speak? Maybe you'd be tempted to look at those things. And that's, people want stability. They want to know what's happening. It's cautiously optimistic what we've got so far. It's not the end of the, it's not the final tick that, yes, everything's sure, but it looks like it's heading the right way. As you say, they're looking for investment. Sounds like people are interested, high profile people as well. KTM is a they're selling a lot of bikes, isn't it? It's quite an unusual one.
It is,
normally
yeah.
When companies get in these kind of troubles, it's because they can't sell enough bikes, or they're not in demand enough, but they've got a big market share, especially off-road. They sell a lot of bikes, so that will make them attractive to investors. And but yeah, on the racing side, it is a bit of a worrying time, because we all know that racing is usually, when people are looking to cut budgets, racing is always going to be on the list, isn't it? Because it's seen, rightly or wrongly, we would argue wrongly, as sort of being a luxury, isn't it? And KTM, no doubt, are doing their best to argue that it isn't. It's an inherent part of their brand, their project, and that sales will suffer if they don't, go racing in the way they do now. But we've just got to wait and see, haven't we, on that one? I think, I mean, we're a few weeks away from the Sepang test, aren't we? The first test of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also, a really good, strong test might even also make a difference. Come out with a competitive showing. As Lewis said, that there's the contract for another 2 years, but if they can get a good start, be competitive at Sepang, that again might just sway the banks, the creditors. Look, guys, don't back away from this, because maybe this long-awaited title challenge could come. We're all, they've got Pedro Acosta, the new rising star, all these other things. They've got lots of reasons to be optimistic about what they can do on the racetrack. But this is kind of, this big cloud is hanging over them at the moment, isn't it? And we're all waiting for it to sort of disappear and for there to be a resolution.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Lewis? It's a good point Pete makes about even the test team, for example, about how they're going to be looked at for their futures as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. There have been some reports and rumours that KTM is maybe looking to offload Danny Pedrosa. Nothing's really come of that so far, so we'll take that with a pinch of salt. But yeah, going back to what Pete says, the hitting the ground running thing is really kind of imperative for KTM, because there is only one rider on its books that has a confirmed 2026 deal. The rest of them have multi-year deals, which you have to assume probably are dripping with performance clauses, with get-out clauses, if there are any. Someone like Pedro Acosta and his manager Albert Valera wouldn't have been so kind of silly to sign a contract that locked them in, indefinitely. Pedro Acosta is a rider that will be in high demand, and that's going to be probably quite crucial to KTM's future as well. If they can't have a bike on the grid next year for the start of next year, regardless of if there's a development freeze or not, if they can't hit the ground running and Pedro Acosta isn't where he thinks he should be, there are going to be some spaces on the grid in 2026 at factory teams that I'm sure would be very, very happy to put their hand in their pocket and make a play for Pedro. And if KTM loses Pedro Acosta, what does that do to its kind of, to that quest to find investors? Because if you're going to invest in a race team and it's really being sold right now on the back of, we have the next superstar, guy in the making here, and if he disappears, you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to put my money into a team, with all due respect, backed, that is spearheaded by, Brad Binder, Maverick Vinales, and Bastianini, riders who have so far not proven to really have genuine title credentials. Brad Binder, when was the last time Brad Binder won a Grand Prix? 2021. And Brad Binder hasn't won a Grand Prix in normal circumstances. Let's also put that point on the table. His Brno win was, everyone remembers that Czech Grand Prix was, the track surface was terrible. Pretty much every manufacturer that wasn't KTM was massively struggling that race. So This is a really key kind of time for KTM. The testing of the new bike has seemed quite positive, since about Misano, when that bike kind of made its debut with Danny Pedrosa in the race. There was a lot of good comments there. But yeah, I think there is a lot of hurdles that KTM are going to have to surmount as well, because like you say, Pete, if someone gets jumpy, Pedro Acosta might have already signed a contract for 2026 with a rival manufacturer, for all we know right now. There's certainly been advanced conversations could have been had as well between his management and other manufacturers. So, there's a lot of moving targets here for KTM, and that's going to complicate it. And I think brand loyalty is one thing, but when you're facing an uncertain future, then brand loyalty goes out the window.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It really is. And to be fair to KTM, they have continued their testing program. They did do some tests before Christmas, and you see Maverick Vinales there, for example, at Jerez. He was there just to watch, and it seems like that side of the race team for MotoGP and their program, they're just kind of continuing as normal, Pete. But yeah, you would almost think, going back to the investment side, there's one obvious investor who I think, it's in the name of the team, if you haven't guessed by now, Red Bull. There's been no real comment from them as such, because of course they're back in off-road programs. They're doing, obviously, Grand Prix, Dakar, for example. They're still doing that. Red Bull are probably waiting to see what the sort of debt administration and the creditors have to say before they even try to get into the discussion of maybe investing in the MotoGP and racing program as a whole. Would that be fair to say?
Got to imagine they're so closely joined to KTM, aren't they? I think Pit Beirer has emphasised that, hasn't he, recently? It's like, Red Bull and KTM, they kind of go everywhere together, don't they, in terms of racing, and then they're not going to split that partnership up. So yeah, as you say, and Red Bull has been kind of completely silent on this, but I think you can be sure that behind the scenes, they're surely extremely interested in what's going on and taking a look. And it just makes sense that they would be an investor and certainly be one of those that would be interested in it. And of course, they have the technical know-how. We've got a lot of big names. Lewis Hamilton, as you say, interested in perhaps investing, becoming part of a MotoGP team. But there's a big difference between an independent team, isn't it? Which really anyone could take over and go racing tomorrow. You can lease bikes, no problem. And taking over a factory team where you're a constructor and you have to have that whole technical, team behind you to design the bike, to maintain the bike, to do the R&D, the test team and everything. So that's a massive undertaking. But Red Bull ticks all of those boxes because they have the financial might, the motorsport interest, the technical knowledge with their F1 team. If they could somehow, imagine if KTM could come out of this where they somehow have a deal where Red Bull increase their involvement and somehow Lewis Hamilton as well.
Yeah.
It would be quite incredible, wouldn't it?
It would be.
If they could pull all that together. And who knows? They're saying that Lewis Hamilton is one of the guys, and you say Red Bull is already the title sponsor and putting in a lot of money. So, let's see what comes out of all this. I think that's the hurdle at the moment, isn't it? It's the KTM are a constructor, and not everyone can just come in. We've had all this talk about BMW coming in, haven't we? And they've been kind of umming and ahhing and backing away. And they're a company with all this background in building bikes and winning the Superbike Championship this year. So it just underlines how big a deal it is to become a constructor in MotoGP. And so I think it's not to be taken lightly, for sure.
Yeah, and just on that point, Lewis Hamilton, interesting comments, wasn't it? Reading the Speed Rig interview with Pit Beirer, saying that there was concrete talks with his management, and it's not the first time we've seen Lewis Hamilton be linked with a MotoGP team. For example, we've seen it in 2024 with Gresini. There was reports there that that Hamilton really didn't deny that there were indirectly to Gresini, but he always said that he's had an interest in maybe getting a MotoGP team and investing in one in the future. It's something that I get quite excited about. When you read Lewis Hamilton's name, you think of just, he's the greatest F1 driver. Some people don't like that when you say that. He's the greatest F1 driver there's ever been. And I think that when you see his name linked to, especially KTM, and you think of the situation that they're in, it has to be exciting, doesn't it? When especially Pit Beirer saying it, you can trust what he says too.
Yeah, I think anyone who isn't excited about it really doesn't understand the prospect that we have here with Lewis Hamilton getting involved in MotoGP. Like you say, Jordan, rumours last year of him being interested in buying the Gresini team. Those rumours sort of kind of came out of nowhere. The Gresini team quickly shot them down. And then when Lewis Hamilton was asked about it at the British Grand Prix, he said there was nothing concrete like that, but I am definitely interested in something like that in the future. You know, he's a bike nut. He loves it. You know, he loves MotoGP. He has his own special edition MV Augusta. He's done Superbike track days with the Yamaha World Superbike team. He's obviously did that ride swap with Valentino Rossi. He's a proper bike nut. He loves it, and not just that, he's a proper motorsport fanatic. As Lewis Hamilton, people I think have kind of unfairly over the last sort of 10 years kind of gone, he's in it for the Hollywood connections and this and the business and blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, you know, drivers are allowed to have outside, you know, activities and racing, and racing is a very small part of their world, really. It's a career that will last, you know, at the highest levels, at most, for most people, 10 years. Hamilton's obviously gone, 15 years now. You know, he'll have a couple more years in him at least. But beyond that, you know, he's only just in his 40s. You know, he's got a long life ahead of him. You need to have other things on the go. And that's what he's done. He's safeguarded his future, and you've got to respect that. If he gets involved with KTM, we don't know in what aspect that's going to be. You know, Pit Beirer said his management have had concrete discussions with KTM, so that would obviously come in some form of investment. We don't know what that would look like. Would it be enough to save the team? It would certainly be enough to entice other investors that maybe weren't even thinking about it the first time to go, oh, well, if he's involved in that, then yeah, let's go. That's a cool project. We trust Lewis. We trust, you know, what he stands for and his other business ventures. Let's not forget this is a guy who has had a reasonably successful team in the Extreme E Championship, and obviously is a part owner of the Denver Broncos NFL team. And he does these things not only to boost his business portfolio, but he does them with a real intention of making a difference. He got involved with the Denver Broncos because the difference between the percentage of players in the NFL who are black versus the percentage that are of black team owners, which, you know, I think it's over 75% of the players are black, and there's only just over 12% of the team owners are from black backgrounds, which is not great. You know, that is a thing that Hamilton has obviously recognised and wants to try and build the foundations to improve with all of his motorsport ventures. You know, he has the Mission 44, thing that he does where, you know, helps people from underprivileged backgrounds and underrepresented backgrounds, you know, get a leg up in the industry, whether it's through, you know, engineering, you know, courses, where improving job prospects, you know, improving education. You know, it's right grassroots level stuff. And let's face it, motorcycle racing is maybe the most backwards industry in motorsport right now for that type of, you know, that type of diversity and that type of culture shift. You know, we don't have very many people of color in the MotoGP paddock. We haven't really ever had very many of them, and, you know, Pete's been there a long time, a lot longer than me, and I'm sure you'll be able to back me up on that. You know, when F1 was and Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel as well, let's not forget, were leading the calls for, you know, more, you know, diversity and inclusion and trying to get Formula One and Formula One fans to think about the world around them. MotoGP stayed silent, and it always has done, until it's been something that is very close to it is affected, like the Valencia thing, you know, which I'm not knocking. That was a fantastic initiative, but it shows that MotoGP can do things if it puts its mind to it. But there's an unwillingness, I think, you know, let's cards on the table. It's an unwillingness to kind of address the world around it. This is what Lewis Hamilton would be very good for MotoGP, and I know there'll be a lot of people out there going, oh, woke this, blah, 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 you know, we don't need this, he's ruined Formula One because of blah, blah, blah. You know, take your racism elsewhere. We're not interested in having it here in MotoGP. You know, it needs to change, and if Lewis Hamilton's going to be the guy to do that, then great. And if his gateway into doing that is by becoming some sort of part owner of KTM or an investor or whatever, then great. If that then opens the door for other such investors and investment and this is the one thing that's just constantly talked about. I think Massimo Rivola spoke about it recently. I know former team boss Razzali has spoken about it. MotoGP needs new money. It needs big investment. It does not have that. It doesn't have that many big sponsors, you know. And it's, of course, we come into this year with one of probably the biggest sponsor that MotoGP had in Repsol not being involved anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, MotoGP's not really doing anything to kind of address that. The Liberty Media sale, excuse me, the Liberty Media acquisition is on hold while it goes through the EU, you know, anti-regulation board, or anti-competition board, sorry. There's no guarantee that that's going to go in the direction that people wanted to. So then if that doesn't happen, and any interested investment who wanted to come in because of the Liberty deal, that's off the table. If that doesn't happen, it's back on the table if Lewis Hamilton gets involved. You know, I'm not saying the future of MotoGP, you know, rests on this, but it will go in a much brighter position, in a much brighter direction if Lewis Hamilton is involved in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I mean, just from a fan perspective, it's like, why wouldn't you want F1's biggest star in with MotoGP? What harm does it do? It only raises the profile of the sport, and as you say, when Lewis Hamilton's there, it brings other people in. Gets more eyes. That's all MotoGP needs, is new eyes on the sport, because the product is good. It just needs more people to see it, and that's the thing that I always get said. It's like, I tell my mates, oh, MotoGP is so much better than MotoGP or F1, for example, and they're like, well, we see F1 more. And I'm like, well, this is the problem. I'm like, if you think F1's great, you watch a MotoGP race and you'll be hooked on it, and that's the key. And it would be a cool story as well with KTM, who are in the situation, like I say. And if something did happen, like I say, nothing's confirmed. Pit Beirer's only said there's been concrete talks with his management, but I think it's something that would be welcomed in the sport, and I think it's needed. Just as you say, new money, new eyes on it, could change perspective maybe of how motorbikes is viewed, and I think that it would be welcomed for me anyway. Like I said, nothing official confirmed. That report was done in, I think, the back end of December, so yeah, we'll let you know if we hear anything else, but certainly an exciting prospect when you hear Lewis Hamilton like MotoGP. So yeah, MotoGP in 2025. Team launches, gents, our favourite time of the year, where we get to see all the new bikes. We've got all the dates apart from one. We've got Trackhouse on the 14th of January, then we've got the Factory Aprilia team on the 16th of January, where we see Jorge Martin with the number 1. Gresini are then on the 18th of January, and then we have Factory Ducati. I mean, the one everyone is looking forward to, see a Marc Marquez in factory colours for the first time. That's on the 20th of January. And then there's a bit of a break. We have both KTM teams on the 30th of January, and then Yamaha are doing that with Pramac as well, so a joint effort on the 31st of January. Then we've got shakedown tests all in between that, and then on the 1st of February, Honda. I don't know what to call them now. I can't call them Repsol Honda because it seems strange after that partnership's ended. Factory Honda will be unveiling their new look bike without Repsol colours, which will be it'll take a while to get used to, I think. And then LCR are on the 8th of February, and then we just have to wait for the VR46 team, which I imagine will be in Indonesia from their teaser video, but there's been no date confirmed. And then we have the 9th of February, which is the sort of MotoGP season launch, which I don't know about you, Pete. What do you think that's going to be like? Do you think it'll be worth the event that they're building it up to be? Do you think it'll be something that fans will really like?
Well, I'm curious to see what the reaction is to it and exactly what goes on, because as you say, this is a new step for MotoGP, isn't it? And I think when people first heard of this, they thought, oh, well, the bikes will be unveiled at this launch.
Yeah.
Of course, they've made clear that, as you've just read out there, the bikes will be revealed in individual team launches separate from this. So it's almost like a presentation, isn't it? And I'm curious to see how it goes down. Chantra will be a big star of it. Obviously, It's in Bangkok. So, the fact that they've chosen to do it there, obviously, well, the test is only a few days later, isn't it, in Borum? So it fits in logistically, but also it's a big part of the world for motorbike sales, of course. So the fact of all the cities it's chosen to, they've chosen there. I think it'll be popular. I think, motorcycling is popular in Southeast Asia. Obviously, people, you guys were talking about the problem of people not knowing or not hearing about MotoGP. They know about Formula One. That's not an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
People know it. They see, all the big adverts on the side of buildings for, Yamaha, Honda, whoever, and they usually feature the MotoGP riders. So they're all pretty much household names, even by people that don't follow the sport closely. So in that regard, it's going to be a popular event. It'll go down well, I think. But I'm curious to see how it, what the format will be exactly, how it's going to work. I guess they're going to sort of rotate the teams up on stage, and it'll all be streamed obviously live around the world at the same time. And let's see. I'm sort of open-minded about it for now, and we'll see, because we all want something new from these things, don't we? And the team launches it, so you get to see the new bikes, or you get to. So what will we get out of this? Let's see.
Yeah. Lewis, what do you think? It's a bit different to F1s, because I know they're doing one in the O2 where I think it's where the liveries will be unveiled, but not the cars. Is that right? Am I got that right?
Yeah. I think that is the compromise they've had to make there, because you can't have all 10 teams assemble and then reveal all your nice new shiny bits on the car while all the engineers are stood right there getting a good view, pictures. I'm gonna go from being totally open-minded about things to being absolutely closed-minded about this, and say that I think MotoGP has already screwed this up, because clearly this was a very hastily organised thing, because we only kind of heard about this towards the end of last year, and we had it on like the live broadcast where they're saying, the season launch will be here, and everyone's like, will it? Nobody's told us.
Yeah.
And then I remember in Barcelona where, press officers coming around and, saying goodbye to everyone at the end of the season. We're like, what's happened to team launch? Like, well, we're having a team launch. I don't know why anyone else is doing it, but we are. And it's kind of like, well, so clearly MotoGP's had an idea in his head that this is what it wanted to be, and all the teams have gone, well, no, because we make quite a lot of money, and this is a great event for sponsors that you're not going to horn in on. So now that it's just what, like you say, Pete, essentially a presentation of all the bikes you've already seen. The fact that the LCR takes place a day before, they couldn't even get LCR to go, right, come on, lads. Let's do it the 9th. Even Chantra's bike in front of his home,
exactly.
First Thai rider in front of his, and they've not even managed to put that together. I'm sorry, but you've already the event is kind of basically a bit pointless at this point. It's great for the fans to get up close to the riders and stuff like that, but as a worldwide event, it's going to be broadcast, I assume. It doesn't really make any sense. They've clearly tried to go down the F1 route of having this kind of joint launch, and it's not panned out that way. Maybe, they'll get it sorted for next year, but the other thing we should say about these launches, isn't it, is that, as you're pointing out there, Liz, the bikes that you see, they're not actually the 25 bikes either, are they? So
true.
From a technical point of view, you get to see last year's bikes with the new colours, because, again, as you say about the F1 engineers, it's all under wraps until they go to the test anyway. So
and so I don't really understand how they couldn't have gotten this together a bit more just a bit more coherent and cohesive, and it's just this is a bit indicative of what Dorna has been for the last few years, where it has some very big ideas and bright ideas, but its execution has been not great. Sprint race is a perfect example of that, of like, here's the thing we'd like to do. We're not going to tell the riders that we've decided that we're going to go ahead with this until they've spoken to the media, who then tell them that they've found out about it, and then we're going to have sprint races at every round. And it's like, okay, fine, but have you thought this one through? It's disappointing. Like, it should be a big event. It should be a big, we're in Thailand, we're going to test, we're going to race there, massive crowd. Why couldn't they have got it together to have all the teams unveil their liveries? I mean, it's just... I don't understand, like, what is going on there.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah, I agree. It's like, it'll be good for the fans on the ground down seeing it up close. I think that'll be cool, because similar, like, on an older scale, the Silverstone stuff was quite cool being there, Pete, because we got to see the bikes getting unveiled, and they had it all down in the pit lane, and no one really, there's no leaks or anything. Didn't get leaked sort of liveries before, so when you seen I was like, oh my god, look how good that looks. But yeah, this is like, I've already seen the bike 10 days before, and it's like, well, I know what's going to come out through here. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe I'm just being a bit sort of negative on it, but like,
just good. Yeah. Sometimes we have to be negative about these things. Everything's not always rosy in the gardens.
Yeah, true. But it's like, come on, it's like, it could have been done a bit better. But yeah, you know what? If it proves me wrong, I'll be happy. But I don't think it's going to be life-changing seeing all these bikes for the first time or the second time again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait to see track action. And like I say, we don't have to wait that long now. Actually, it's only, 25 days really till Sepang Shakedown. Pete, you'll be there, and yeah, that'll be fun to get back on that again when we see bikes on track and all the new inventions that people bring out, and you're like, well, I think back to last year, Pete, just to share something. Do you remember I don't know if it was the Shakedown or it was the first day of the test. Remember the Aprilia, that aero rake they had, and you had all was it Massimo Rivola down standing holding it and stuff, and yeah, that's the things I like about testing. You obviously know more, Pete, being there. It's different, isn't it, compared to a Grand Prix weekend?
Yeah, I really enjoy the test. The whole atmosphere is different. Obviously, the first test of the year as well. It's like sort of first day back at school, isn't it? And you're sort of easing yourself in because the shakedown test is not a serious test. So the riders are, they know they've got, in most cases, 6 days on track in Malaysia, which is a lot of riding in that heat. So, you've also got to pace yourself a bit. Actually, tyres are sometimes also another issue. Certainly last year, I know that some of the factories are saying that you've got to plan how you're going to use them. So it's a lot of running, and you can't afford to just keep throwing new tyres on the bike. So you've got to be really sort of strategic about when you're going to put new tyres and which parts you're going to use and everything else. But yeah, it was Aprilia with their certainly up to a few eyes. I was sitting next to the Yamaha garage when I think it was Oliveira, wasn't it, went down the pit lane with that on the back, and Sumi, the Yamaha technical director, sort of turned to me and said, "Tennis?" So yeah, it definitely got people out of the garages, even from the other teams, to have a look at what's that. And then of course people pretty quickly realised it was just for the sensors for the aero. But it does show how important the aero is in MotoGP, and let's see if it'll be out in there again. I'm sure they'll be measuring everything. Aprilia, of course, they've got their new technical director, haven't they? So we'll see what Stelachini's Aprilia looks like, and if you'll take it with the aero more in the direction of the Ducatis. Aprilia's been sort of alone, hasn't it?
Yeah, they have.
It's going their own way with that sticking really at sort of 100% with the ground effect. And I think it looked like at the Barcelona test they were edging towards going a bit the Ducati direction, which makes sense when all the other teams are sort of running that way as well. So yeah, it's always exciting to see the test, the Sepang test. It's not a normal test. It's not an official test, obviously, but media are not allowed in pit lane. So it's always the normal sort of access is not available at the shakedown. So yeah, it's sort of what you can see on track or out the window and that kind of thing. But yeah, after a couple of months without bikes, it's always nice to see them on track, and it's always a surprise at how loud and how fast they are. No matter how many years you've been watching them, after not seeing them for a few months, and you guys will know this as well, it's always a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah, it really brings the senses alive, doesn't it? And you think, Jesus, TV really doesn't do justice for how loud these bikes are and how fast they are. It's one thing I always say to people: if you want to go to a race, people say, but you see everything on TV. It's not the point. You need your senses to come alive, and I think your ears, their hair and your arms stand up when you go past. It's unbelievable, and yeah, good point, Pete. And I think we'll end it there. Not that long till track action again. Not long till team launches. We'll fill all gaps in between all that, and yeah, we'll see you next week for another podcast. If you enjoyed it, the score by now. Like, subscribe, comment on what you thought of the podcast, and we'll see you next week. Take care.